Hello, my name is Nikolai Kolev, and this is my advanced 3D presentation project. For this project I decided to do a character because I want to be a character artist and go into the games industry and work as a character artist. So my main points of inspiration for this project was the movie Gladiator and Crytek's game Rise, Son of Rome. Because I wanted to, I was interested into that time period, and I wanted to do expand a little bit more on my modeling skills and for characters, seeing as it was a bit of a mixed match between soft and more like standard modeling, hard surface modeling, more organic modeling, and I wanted to expand a little bit more on my skills. That's why I picked this up, and also look into more dynamic posing, and maybe also try and research a little bit about PBR and physics-based rendering. Since I started the project, I mainly drew inspiration and used as reference Gladiator and the game Rise, Son of Rome, and some real-life reference of representations of Roman armor. But I incorporated those designs in a different way. I didn't use only one image as my reference, but more or less I combined different designs and shapes from all the reference images I had gathered. So I incorporated the shoulder armor and the clothing from the movie Gladiator, the chest plate and the body armor and the helmet from Rise, Son of Rome, and the belts, the straps across the chest, the scabbards, the shape of the shields, and the sword I implemented from real life Roman armor reference. Which later on in the modeling process I changed some of these designs, because I realized that some of the things that I previously modeled for the blockout stage wouldn't really work after I rigged the character and I had to skin him. So, and I had certain limitations with them, so I decided to go with a different approach, and I found some really nice concept designs of particular the same type of armor on the internet. So I kind of changed some of the designs of the armor, which was mainly the chest plate, the body armor, and the belts, which were going around his body and around the waist. And I also changed the design to the leg, the armor on the legs and on the hands as well. I initially used ZBrush to sculpt out the clothing for the character, so I can kind of create a little bit more high definition and high quality mesh, and high polygonal mesh, so I can then bake down the information in a normal map to the lower poly after I've retopologized the character, which was retopology was also something new to me, and it's something I'm still it's a learning curve for me still, because considering I had to rig and skin the character after I was finished with the modeling and retopologizing process, I had to build the topology in a way that it will not break and it will look more realistic, and it will work with the rig. So it was still an extra thing that I learned as well during this process. When I also, for my character, because I initially wanted him to be set in kind of a battlefield environment, I wanted to make like a small diorama which would just represent him in that kind of battle scene, with his shield up, protecting himself from like a swarm of arrows just flying towards him, and maybe have something like around the background, just like arrows and spears, and maybe like swords. And I was envisioning like a banner in the background. So initially, when I made that for my alpha, I rigged and skinned the character, and I made the diorama in ZBrush as a high poly sculpt, and I just remesh down into ZBrush, into Maya. And I presented this in my alpha, and I was given quite constructive feedback that some things needed to be changed, such as the pose needed to be made like the lower body of the character needed to have a little bit more weight to it and have that kind of twist as well, so it looks a bit more realistic, that there's like there was movement, some type of movement, even though it's still posed, there's no animations to it. And just to add just a little bit more realism to the actual scene and what is happening in the environment. And I was also told that the diorama was a bit too small, so I had to make some alterations and change it, which I actually did. A brand new model straight in Maya, just using a simple plane by adding subdivisions and using like the soft selection to make it more of an uneven terrain, because I didn't want to have like a flat playing field or something like that. So after I made some of these changes, I added some of the props that I initially wanted to have in the environment. So I scattered around some arrows, spears, and I also reused the props that I made for the character, such as the sword and the shield, to put around the environment. And I put like a legionary banner in just a little bit in the background, so it kind of gives that slight depth of field to the scene, even though my initial approach was that the character is the main thing that I wanted to show off. After I was finished with after alpha, I pretty much started making the changes. I pretty much started sculpting some of the details on the armor, which was some damage and scratches and hits and dints. And I also sculpted the ornamentations in ZBrush, which then I baked down as normal map information onto the lower poly. I also did in texturing wise, I used Substance Painter which was a new piece of software which I looked into to create my materials and textures for my character, because it was mainly based around using PBR, and PBR was something that I wanted to look into as part of this project. And also it would give me a really nice realistic effects which I was looking for. So I used various combinations of materials like leather, silk, for the clothing, and for the straps as well, metal, steel, gold, silver. But I didn't go just as far as to paint also skin materials for the body parts. But I didn't go just as far as to paint variation of materials onto my character, because I had a clear vision of the color scheme, and I was trying to keep it consistent with the reference and how the armor and the colors, the combination of colors in that time period was in the Roman army. But considering the nature of my environment, I decided to play around a little bit more with the roughness map, the height maps of the materials in Substance, and like add a little bit of damage, aging, and like rust to the metal materials, so I can just bring out a little bit more of like the history of my character, and like bring my character to life with the texture and the materials, not just with like the pose and the environment. So it was like just like give me that slight detail of information that I wanted. But I experienced some problems when I brought in my materials from Substance Painter into an Unreal Engine, and that was mainly because I had to figure out on which channels in my height map from Substance Painter my height map and my metallic map were saved on, which I initially didn't know about, so I had to do a little research about it. And after figuring that out, I had to sort them out in the actual material shader, which then gave me the effect that I was really looking for. And it made it look a little like how it looked in Substance Painter, then it looking like some had weird results in the beginning. I also used for the diorama a standard way of texturing, which was just combining different kind of textures, for textures, which was more for ground, gravel, and like dirt textures around the environment, and I use like the vertex paint methods of just vertex paint combining to creating a vertex paint color into Unreal with two textures and vertex painting the top, and I wanted to put another texture which would represent like the ground beneath the surface on the side of the diorama, so it just breaks it up a little bit from top part of the diorama and just adds a little bit more detail to it in a way. Lighting wise, I didn't experiment too much with the lighting. I used the standard directional light, but because the directional light was giving me quite harsh shadows, I added a skylight into it, into my scene, because it kind of lit up the entire scene and gave it just a little bit of extra color and mood to it, which was like a nice effect that I really liked, and also softened some of the shadows. And I also added some reflectors into my scene around the character, and like the shield and swords and spears and arrows around the environment, so it gives that just a little bit extra reflection and realism to the actual scene. And some of the problems that I occurred early on was that I needed to during the modeling process, I needed to figure out what I needed to do for my helmet. So it was a bit of a difficult situation because I had problems sorting out a topology for it, and I found a really neat tool, which was to use skin wrap for to do the top bit of the helmet, to get a nice and evenly spaced and good flow of topology. And then I used like extruding and the modeling toolkit to create the rest of the helmet. And also I had some issues with the rigging and skinning, seeing as that's not an area that I'm really good at, and I have some previous knowledge and experience from it, but I had the base to create what I needed just so I can pose my character and have him in a scene. But overall, some changes I would like to make are to some of the skin, maybe looking a bit more into skin shading and create some nice skin shaders for like the eyes and the face especially, so I can bring up a little bit more of the characteristics of like my character, and maybe look also into PBR as well, more like metallic surfaces and anything relevant, and also just expand a little bit on my knowledge of like general hard surface and organic modeling, and how I can like incorporate those two methods in further down into my workflow and new work audio. So that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed. So thank you very much.